Bill Sharp and Gary Numan together. Change Your Mind. An unlikely partnership, as we say. Bill Sharp and Gary are here. Bill, how did it come about? How do you happen to be working together?
Well, there I was, sitting in the studio.
Oh, hang on. This is the press
and
release.
I was looking for...
It says here, let me read this. The press release from the record company says, Bill decided when he took the song in the studio that it needed a certain kind of steely, detached vocal, which he asked Gary Numan, who was around the studio at the time, to provide.
And he popped his head in and said, "You're looking for a steely, detached vocal, aren't you?"
What really happened?
Yes, come and sing the song.
What really happened? It must have sort of come about in a slightly more haphazard way than that.
Well, no, actually, because we've the Shack Attack have done our past 2 albums in Gary's studio down at Rock City in Shepperton, and I like the studio, so I decided to do my solo album there. plug. And I'd sort of written this track during the album, and the way it turned out, I mean, a voice like Gary's was really going to fit into it.
Did you try and do it yourself or something?
I did, actually, but I'm such a useless singer that I thought, well, we've got to blow that one out. And the engineer, Nick, he's worked with Gary before on his earlier albums, so he gave a tape to Gary's dad, who gave it to
Gary?
To Gary. And his dad came back and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, Bill, Gary doesn't like the track. He loves it."
He loves it. Clever way of doing it.
So, and Gary came in and did it. And
did you need much convincing, Gary? I mean, were you surprised when you heard it that it would obviously work as well as it has?
No, when I heard the song, I liked it very much. So there was no problem along those lines at all. I was worried about whether I could do it or not, because I'd never done anything like that. I did the Lee Cooper Jeans advert in '78.
That's a long time ago.
That was the last time I'd ever done any session singing. All after that was just for me.
Yes.
So I'm my own critic there. So I was very nervous doing that sort of thing.
You have been moving towards a sort of dance format in your own music, though, haven't you? Really, with the singles you put out.
I've been trying to. Yeah, I haven't quite got it down very well yet.
We say, unlikely partners. Do you feel that in a way you're both victims of image, that people tend to see you in a box and not expect collaborations like this?
In a sense, I suppose, yeah, but then certainly for me, I create the image, so it's my own fault. Which is a problem with images, really. You do tend to give a bad impression.
Or a distinct impression. I saw in Smash Hits, Bill, you were described there as the ultimate Cortina and Fluffy Dice man.
Well, that's our
is that good or bad?
Well, I can't see what's bad about it. I mean, we've always been slagged off for our audiences sort of having Cortinas and furry dice. I mean, I don't see what's wrong with it. And in fact, the last review we got in NME, amazingly enough, was a great review of the gig we did at Hammersmith. And she was sort of saying all the positive things about our so-called working class audience, whatever. So what? I mean, I don't see what's wrong with it.
Certainly, I think collaborations like this can break down barriers like that, these sort of artificial barriers, because you're all living in the same world, you're all playing music, and it's popular music.
It's interesting, too, because really, I mean, Shack Attack doesn't really have an image. I mean, nobody really have a clue what I look like. I mean, when I walked in here, there's Gary out there, he's all signing, I sort of just walked through and it's great. So,
they're saying, who's that chap with Gary? Come on.
No, it's true, though. I mean, we're not sort of known as sort of facially. I mean, they know the music, but they don't know us sort of visually. So we've been successful in our music, and I think that speaks for itself.
Absolutely. This is from a Bill Sharp solo project. We'll talk a bit more after another track from it, actually. This is on the other side of the 12-inch. Remix, remake, remodel, Bill Sharp. Remix, remake, and remodel. Bill Sharp on vocals. Hey!
Don't laugh. Don't laugh.
Now then, before we talk about what maybe you two could be doing together in the future, why, Bill, do a solo LP? I mean, I thought you get terrific sort of feeling out of what you do with Shack Attack.
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoy playing with Shack Attack. I mean, we do a lot of live work still, which we enjoy. But I think it's a good thing, actually, to get out of a band occasionally and do solo things. Because when you play together a lot, things can become a little complacent, perhaps a little bit stale. So I sort of, I had a load of songs left over from when we did the Down on the Street album. And really this sort of opportunity to do the album in the summer came along. We had a couple of months off. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in and do a solo album.
Yes.
And it's just the opportunity to work with other people, other musicians, I mean, people like Gary and other singers. And, I've done it now. It's sort of getting out of your system in a sense. And I've come back into the band, and everything's a lot more positive. And I just hope it works for the good of the band. I mean, it's definitely a second string to Shack Attack. I'm not leaving the band or anything. And I just hope that it helps the name of Shack Attack.
Yes, of course, Gary, you decided all those years ago to kind of move out of a Tube Boy Army context to go solo, and obviously it helped you a lot to get away from that very tight situation of working with the same people all the time as well.
Well, it was slightly different for me because it was only a band name anyway.
That's true.
I mean, I didn't do anything different.
Yeah.
I used to write the songs then and play most things except for bass and drums.
I'm really thinking of the time with Dramatis when you split away from them and now you've worked with them again.
Yeah, well, even then though, really.
I think I'll give up on this bit.
I've never been in a situation like a democratic band. I've always been in bands where everyone did what I told them. So, I never ever had the trouble.
You're sacked.
This is why he's wearing a military hat here. Are you going to work together again, Gary, do you think, the two of you?
It probably depends quite a lot on what happens with this. I would hope so. I don't see any reason why not to.
Because there was a nice atmosphere when you were recording it all, was there? It seemed to gel.
Yeah, I mean, it was great, because Gary came in and did it. I mean, we did it in an hour, and he sort of came in and we went round the pub, spent the rest of the time having a drink.
That's the way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was sort of first take, virtually, just a few little tidy-ups. But, I mean, really...
Yeah, like singing the right notes. That's what
I try one again.
Would you see yourself maybe working together on some of your material now, Gary?
Yeah, I think so. I thought the point I made earlier to Bill was about the production on it. I think is exceptional, and that could be very helpful to me.
you have worked on your own, haven't you? And worked with producers, but you
no, I've done everything on my own except for one. I did a co-production thing with Bill Nelson once, which didn't work out that well, unfortunately.
That's right, because you shelved a lot of the stuff, didn't you? And did it again.
Yeah.
So what are you up to at the moment, Mr. Newman, apart from trying to get your plane to go in the air?
That plane.
It doesn't want to fly.
For me, that plane. It went wrong again today.
Oh, dear.
It went wrong the last time I flew. No, what else? Oh, yeah. I'm back in the studio next Sunday, I think, to finish off my next single, which is also working towards the album, getting that ready. I'm working with a lot of African stuff at the moment and Arabian vocal lines, so it's very experimental, so it's quite slow progress because we're sort of sucking it and see as we're going along, really.
Arabian vocal lines.
This is remember these men that do like these chants from towers in Morocco?
That's right.
I'm trying to get a load of them on tape somehow from these adverts and old films and then actually playing it on a viola, and it sounds quite nice.
All right, so busy times coming ahead for you. Gary, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. Good luck with your solo project.
Thank you very
much.
much.
The two of you, let's see if Change Your Mind gets you together on Top of the Pops, which could be a fascinating experience.
Great.
Just love the pictures on the single sleeve, actually. Talk about a clash of images. What? That's this.
Great.
All right, we move on.
View from the top goes back to the summer of 1979, in fact, June of 1979, and the record at number one that week for the first time was Tube Boy Army's Our Friends Electric, led, of course, by Gary Numan, who's my guest for the next hour, and we're going to choose some of the songs that were in the chart that week and talk about what was going on with you that week. And you never appear the excitable type, but was this an exciting moment?
It's very exciting, yeah, that it got to number two, and that's more than you ever expect. I mean, you dream of being number one and things like that, but it's more than you expect to get to two. And it's such a big thing in your life. It's your whole life up to that point to be number one. And we got it so close, you just can't let yourself imagine it could ever happen. And you say to yourself the whole week, number two's great, I'm really happy with number two. Yeah, because you don't let yourself believe it go up any higher. And when it does, it was funny because you expect I suppose a planet to change colour or something strange and wonderful to happen, and it doesn't. I was watching the telly, and somebody rang up, Martin from Beggar's Banquet rang up and said, "You're number one," and I was very happy. I sort of said, "Thank you very much," and looked around the floor a bit, and then sat down and.
Anticlimax.
Yeah, everyone was out of work. You know, there's nobody to ring. And it was an anticlimax. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful feeling because you're aware, you're sensible enough to be aware of what's happened, but nothing's actually changed. You don't open the front door and see a big pot of money, or a flash car suddenly appears, or women suddenly start hanging around. Those sort of things don't happen for quite a while.
But they do happen eventually.
Oh, it happens eventually, yeah. But at that particular moment when you first find out you're number one, nothing in your life has actually changed other than a phone call. So while you're aware of what's happening, it's hard to relate to it until things actually start to change around you, and your life itself changes. Now you start doing lots of television and radio things, and
was that the first thing that you noticed, that things were different, when suddenly after that first phone call, then there must have been a lot of other phone calls saying, "Come here, go there, do this, do that."
Yeah, the touring side of things was very, very strong. Things like that. and you're going to New Zealand and seeing things like Numan Go Home written on walls, and you didn't, until sort of 3 or 4 weeks ago, they never even knew you was alive. And it's funny. It's funny to see things like that. You go 12,000 miles and somebody doesn't like you. That's never met you.
Well, these are the things you have to cope with, as well as the pots of money and all the women hanging around. You've got to cope with that as well. Numan Go Home. Right, well, your record, which we'll get to just before the end of the show, but we'll work our way through some of the other songs that were about that week. And a revolutionary record that had been number one, was almost on its way out of the charts, was Pop Music by M. And it set the... it paved the way for others of its type, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was... There are certain kinds of records which are tailor-made to be singles. I mean, I'm not really very good at it, despite still sort of hanging around. I'm really not very good at writing proper hit singles. I think Cars was probably the closest I ever got to the perfect formula, if you like, for a hit single. Hook lines and so forth. I think Pop Music was, if not the best, certainly one of the best of that kind of song anyway, like a modern 3-minute pop song. It's perfect for it.
And a one-man band too, wasn't he? Robin Scott was his name.
That's right,
he?
yeah. Still going.
Right, here it is, M and Pop Music. Pop Music, that's M on this week's View from the Top. We're in June 1979. Our friend's Electric is number one. My guest is Gary Numan, and we get to one of your heroes here, Bowie and Boys Keep Swinging, which was also on the way down. To when did your being a fan of Bowie date back to?
Well, I was a great T-Rex fan, actually. And when Bowie first came out, there was that rivalry thing. I don't know if you remember that, but they would knock each other in public quite a lot. Now, apparently behind the scenes, that was all just front anyway. Well, I didn't know that. I was only young. And so, being a great T-Rex fan, I wouldn't like Bowie just on the principle of it, no matter what. I was a Bolan fan, and that's how it was, which is very silly. But I was only quite young. So I didn't really get into David Bowie until after he'd retired the first time. I suppose, just after, I think it was called Pin-Ups. Was it? Yes, Pin-Ups. Just after that came out, I forget what the next one was. Diamond Dogs? Well, it was around about that period that I started to get into him, because then Bolan was slipping anyway. And then that's when I got back into the older stuff and carried on from there.
And one of Bolan's last TV shows had Bowie on it, didn't it?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, what Heroes he'd done, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. Yeah, it's good there.
Okay, let's go back to this one. June 79, Boys Keep Swinging. That's David Bowie and Boys Keep Swinging. One of the interesting things about this show is that people choose things that you wouldn't associate with them. You would not associate Gary Numan with Supertramp, for instance.
Well,
because people tend to put you in categories, don't
yeah,
they?
They do.
Well, he wouldn't like, dinosaur bands like that.
Well, when I remember one interview in particular, when I first got famous, I'd only done about half a dozen. And it was my first week of being relatively well known. And some bloke came to me and he started talking a few things about the importance of punk and that, which I never agreed with. And I thought, oh. And then he dropped this bombshell about, are you now going to start slagging bands like Yes and Supertramp, people like that? And I said, why? Why should I want to do that? And he said, because they're big bands. I said, yeah, well, that means a lot of people like them. So what's the problem there? A lot of people are getting pleasure out of it. That's what I want to be. I want to be bigger than them, hopefully. And he got really offended. He thought because I come out of the punk era, that I was going to be like that and slag everybody off just because they was bigger than there before me. And it was stupid then, and it's stupid now, and it'll always be stupid, that attitude. It's ridiculous. The bigger a band is, the more people it makes happy, and that's our entire reason for being here. That's all. And I love this song. I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, and this album was terrific too.
Yeah, it was a tremendous stuff, and there's no reason to knock it at all just because they're a big band. I can't think of a worse reason for knocking something.
Absolutely. We'll all second that. Here's Supertramp and Breakfast in America. That's Breakfast in America, Supertramp, and now we get to the Skids, Masquerade, Stuart Adamson before Big Country, and I liked the Skids a lot.
Yeah, I did. The last show I ever did before I got famous was at a pub called the White Hart in Acton, and the Skids were on it, and I was on it as Tubeway Army then. And there was a mix-up in the bill, and we should have been supporting, but we was actually the headline band, and they was really good. It was very embarrassing for me because they was far better than we were at that time anyway. Very, very polished, very professional. The songs were really on the case, you know. And they did their set, and I was terrified about going on after them. And then we went on. We did about 15, 20 minutes. There was this huge fight, and they pulled the plug, and that was the end of it. And that was the end of my punk career. And Stuart Adamson then was terrific. Tremendous style all of his own, you know. It's easy to see. I'm glad that Big Country did what they did. And Jobson's such a great character. It's a shame that he's not around as big as he was, because he was a great character, and the business sort of thrives on people like that. I liked him a lot.
Let's hear the way they were that summer, the Skids and Masquerades. Now we move from Masquerade by the Skids, we move up the charts a bit to Ricky Lee Jones, Chucky's in Love, and another one. She makes great albums occasionally, they come out, but never any hits like this.
She did have a big hype surrounding her, though. And it's hard to, I mean, the song was good, very good, but it's hard to say whether she was as big as the song should have made her, and whether she would have been better to have been just a little bit smaller with a lot less hype, and just developed on her own. I know she was closely connected with a label that I was with, and so I heard a lot of sort of behind-the-scenes gossip about what she was like. And while she was very clever, she was apparently very difficult, and would suddenly decide that she couldn't go on stage because her favourite brown teddy bear was still in America. And that was it. And she wouldn't do it. And there was no reasoning with the woman at all. I mean, these are only stories, man. I don't know if they're true or not.
Oh, give me more.
Things like that, you know, sort of strange goings on in aeroplanes, and she was coming over and things like that. So either she was like that, or the strain of it all, and trying to live up to the hype, which must be terrible. To be sort of called the greatest thing in the world and have to live up to it. When up until then you've only been pushing a supermarket trolley or something. It does take a lot of getting used to. It really does. I mean, the last thing I was driving a lorry for WH Smiths. They're just driving around in a lorry, and then before you know it, people are calling you all these things. And it's very unfair. I don't know about her, but especially in my case, it was only my second album. So I hadn't done the 5 or 6 years learning your business beforehand, learning how to record, learning how to sing properly, how to be on stage, how to handle audiences, how to handle the press. But we're steadily increasing success, you know, so you got used to it in each easy stages, if you like. It came all at once. And that is really hard to cope with, because you have to do all your learning with everybody watching. And she may have had the same problem, and that may have made her a bit erratic. I mean, I got very erratic.
Very few people do have the chance to serve that apprenticeship now, don't they?
No, you're right. Yeah, more than ever now. It's bang in, bang back out again, and not just, you don't just make it. No, everyone becomes a megastar for about a year, and then they fade away again. It's amazing how it works. I don't know why it works like that.
Yeah. Well, this was her 5 minutes anyway. Ricky Lee Jones and Chucky's in Love. Chucky's in Love, Ricky Lee Jones, View from the Top. I guess Gary Numan, it's June 1979. We get to the Ruts and Babylon's Burning. Ferocious stuff, this was.
Yeah, I was never a great fan of the band as a whole, but I thought this one stood out. The chap died in this, didn't he? I think, yeah. That's a shame when things like that happen. And I don't know if that was because of the business itself or not. I don't think the business can do that to you. Only if you take it too seriously, really, can the business make you do something like that.
Didn't you take it seriously, though, in the early days, didn't you?
A little bit, but not that seriously. I mean, I was aware of the fact that I woke up in the morning and I'd been dribbling, and I'd sleep in my eyes and stuff. So I knew that I put on the face, I went out and virtually like going to work. And so it's harder to take it that seriously. I never believed in the press handouts, mainly because I wrote most of them. So I used to know what the lies were, you know. And I think if it ever gets to a stage where you feel like doing something like that, where you really feel like there's no point to it all, then you're in the wrong business. And better to get out of the business than to get out of life, do something else. Really.
Very profound.
Yeah, a bit deep, eh?
Here's the Ruts and Babylon's Burning. Babylon's Burning, that's the Ruts. This week's View from the Top. My guest Gary Numan as we move up to the Pistols. This was the death pangs of the Pistols, wasn't it, about now? 79, come on everybody. It had all gone horrible by then, hadn't it?
Yeah.
Did you go and see them in the early days?
Yeah. Do you remember they did one at Notre Dame near Leicester Square for that Janet Street Porter programme? I was at that one. And I had my T-shirt, which I'd specially ripped for it. Safety pins stuck where they didn't need to be, because that's how you had to look. It was silly, wasn't it, really, all that? Stupid. I remember going down King's Road and seeing a T-shirt, I think it was £5, and the same T-shirt with burn marks on it for £7. And that was how genuine it was. It was fashion. It always was. It is now. It's fashion. All this speaking for the kids rubbish is rubbish. Especially when you're getting 50 grand advances, whatever it was from EMI, things like that. How come you're not in touch with anything?
You think there was nothing more to it than that?
Very, very little. And maybe with some people more than others, but certainly not as far as the Pistols were concerned. McLaren's too clever to fight somebody's cause for him. He can make more money doing what he does. He's a businessman.
But when you were at that show, you weren't thinking that, were you? You were thinking, this is going to change the world.
I was just having fun. I didn't think it was going to change the world. I never... The only punk band I liked was the Pistols, funny enough. And I didn't like all of that. I didn't like the Clash. I didn't like the Vibrators or whoever else was around then. Really? Not at all. I mean, I went to see the Clash and it was awful.
I just thought it was fun because it...
I was at that one where the bloke got his ear bitten off. Remember that? The bloke with a big tooth. I was at that one as well. And just jumping up and down, but couldn't really see much in it. It was more there just to feel like you was a part of something different. And I felt like I was part of something new. The fact that I didn't like it didn't seem that important at the time. And then about a year later, I began to notice that everybody was signing punk bands. So I started writing punk songs and got a contract. And wrote Our Friends Electric and got famous, made all the money and didn't look back really. I didn't have any artistic aims in mind. I didn't want to change the world. I wanted to join it. Really.
On my side, I was just amused watching all those record companies dashing around, signing all these guys for fortunes. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of it was like fever, wasn't it? It was a great time to have been around, actually. Just to have seen it. Yeah, to have seen it going on, and to see how things like that can suddenly take off out of nothing,
and how so many people can be taken in.
And all of a sudden, the so-called dinosaur bands, as we were talking about earlier, were getting harder. And somehow trying to keep up with it all. I know they didn't need to, because in a year or so it had all gone anyway, and they was back to doing what they'd always been doing. Back to quality in a way, really. Yeah, back to doing it properly.
But this was always a great song. So here's the Pistols and Come On Everybody. Sex Pistols, Come On Everybody, on this week's View from the Top. Right, it's the summer of 1979, the end of June. Our Friends Electric is number one. My guest is Gary Numan. We move up to Eddie Grant's Living on the Front Line. He's a survivor, isn't he? I mean, he comes and goes. He goes through these hot patches, and then he goes cold for a while, but he always comes back.
Yes. I met the band, Eddie Grant's band, in Italy once. We was doing... Oh, God, it was a really strange show. Demis Roussos was on it. Me, Andy Gibb, Eddie Grant, the Knacker on it as well. And I remember we was all sitting around this telly in this hotel watching the tennis final. It was Connors and Nick Connors. Somebody, I remember now. Somebody, and we was all sitting around. And see Demis Roussos sitting down watching tennis on a telly. It's odd. You don't expect that. There's all these bands, all like these really big people just sitting around watching the telly. It's a funny time, that. But anyway, Eddie Grant, it was the band come up. And while obviously musically we didn't have that much in common as sort of British out there together, it was quite nice, really. It was very, very friendly.
The San Remo Pop Festival thing, was that right? Or wasn't that going on then?
Oh, I can't remember. God, I did so many. It was up in the mountains, I remember that. Middle of nowhere, no women, desperately boring. Terrible, really. I hated it.
Right, I'm sure Eddie Grant didn't like it much either. He's Living on the Front Line.
Living on the front line,
Eddie Grant's Living on the Front Line. That was number 5 that week. Now we'll hop over Quantum Jump, hop over Unfortunately Squeeze, Up the Junction. That was number 3 that week, one of my favourite Squeeze.
Yeah, they
tracks.
wasn't too pleased about that.
What?
I remember we was at some of the Pops, and I think they'd been hanging around there at 2-ish for a while, or 1-ish. No, sorry, 3 or 2-ish for a while. I can't remember exactly now. And I was number 1, so I went bowling in, like I said before. And, hello, everybody. And I remember 1 or 2 of them were a little bit... didn't seem too keen on me at the time. I spoke to Jules Holland since, and he's all right, but it was that...
Difford of Tilbrook.
Yeah, they was... I think they definitely thought they deserved it. And I was a little bit of an upstart that had sort of snipped their golden prize.
Oh.
Which is, it's saying, I was very surprised. I thought, God, that seems about unnecessary. You know? There's me being friendly. But that was my very first taste of
professional rivalry.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, when it gets a little bit stronger.
We'll hop over that. We'll hop over Anita Ward there. Ring My Bell, the record that had been number 1 the week before you. And elaborate a little. You were saying that you thought, right, I'm going to join in this, I'll write a punk record, and came up with Our Friends Electric.
No, I wrote a song called That's Too Bad. And, that was my first punk song. That got me the contract. I then wrote another one called Bombers. And the reason I did that was to get them to put some money into us, because my dad had given me the money for the first single. And I thought, if I started doing this slightly more off the wall stuff before they put any money into me, they'd drop me like bricks. So I thought, well, I'll do this Bomber song, because I was talking about a producer and things. That means they'd put some money into me. This is how I saw it in those days. I thought, well, if they put some money into me, they're going to have to want to get that back. So they'd be less keen to drop me. So I did that. I thought, right, now's the time. So I did a song called Down in the Park, which is the first of the big electronic stuff. And it did reasonably well, but there was tremendous ructions in the record company. And me and one of the directors actually squared up to each other twice, which he really did get ever so nasty at one point, because they had signed me as a pop punk equivalent to the Lurkers. Now, where the Lurkers were pure punk, I was what they thought might just get it around about the 30-40 mark, because I was slightly more poppy with my stuff. And then I said, the punk thing's at it, it's on its way out. I didn't like it anyway, and I want to do this. I went out to do an album of punk stuff and came back with an electronic album, so they went mad, obviously, because they didn't sign me for that. And they couldn't see it at the time, anyway. Although, to their credit, when Our Friends Electric was written, they liked it more than I did. And it was them that really pushed it as a single, sort of more than me. So they did turn around, but initially they was against it completely.
But you could see, as you were writing this, you could see this had commercial potential, or was it just
I didn't think this would sell. I didn't think Our Friends Electric would be the big hit. I thought it would set me up as an underground, not an underground hero, but something different, or maybe of a little bit more worth than the punk stuff. Although I've never taken it that seriously that I thought I had that much to say, but I thought it was a little bit more adventurous, maybe, than the punk stuff. And that was what I wanted to do. I knew that Carl's was coming up, and I knew that those songs were in the pipeline as demos. I'd written them. And I always thought Cars might do it. But I didn't think Our Friends Electric would do it. That was purely to set myself up to give me something of a cult following, so I could then go out live and play to my own crowd, albeit small. And then Cars would come out, and that should have been the game plan anyway. But Our Friends Electric made it and messed it up a bit. Well, I'm pleased it messed up a bit, but it's 5.25 minutes long. It's got no definable hook line at all. It drones. You can't dance to it. Everything's against it. Everything's against it at all. I've no idea what it did.
You've not managed to fathom that over these years. Why and how?
No, everything's against it. It hasn't got one single thing which you would associate with a hit record. Nothing at all. I mean, you try dancing to it for a start.
Hypnotic.
Is it? Boring, some people might say. It must have something, obviously, but I honestly, and I'm not just blowing my own trumpet, I honestly don't know what it was, and it was never intended to be a single. And if I'd intended it to be a single, it would have been 3 to 4 minutes like Cars. It was long because it's supposed to be an album track, and really just to set myself up as something a little bit different. Now, I thought it might get me an old grey whistle test. And that was it. That was the extent I'd hoped for it, really.
Now you know. Here it comes. Tubeway Army, Our Friends Electric. Our Friends Electric, number 1, end of June 1979. So Was there a lot of pressure on you after that, or did you know, because you knew you had cars waiting in the wings, that you would be able to follow this?
Yeah, I was always confident having got there I'd know what I was doing. As it turned out, I didn't. I was just lucky. I don't know if I can say this on the radio, but becoming famous is very much like losing your virginity. You've heard a lot about it, and you know what it's supposed to be like because you've read all about it. And when you do it, it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. It's nowhere near as good. You was nowhere near as good as you thought you was going to be. And all of a sudden, you're being compared to people that have been doing it for years and really know what they're doing. And you're pretending that you've been doing it for years and you know what you're doing, but all the time you're playing it by ear and just faking it. And that's exactly what it was like. I faked it for a couple of years until I learned how to do it properly. I said earlier, I did all my growing up in public.
We'll give a few tips to potentially famous people as to how you do learn how to be famous.
There aren't any fixed rules or ways of making it, and there aren't any fixed rules or ways of staying there. You have to take virtually each record and each week as it comes and see what's about, see what's in fashion, see what isn't, see which papers are the most important, so which ones are best to talk to, which ones might be more helpful than others or more supportive than others, when to do a lot of press, when to know when to stop because you're overdoing it, people are going to get fed up with you. And all that can only come with experience. And if you're lucky enough to get through the first 2 years, which is when most people fall, you can get through that, then you should, with a little bit more luck, because you'll always need luck, you should be able to hang on for another few more years, providing the songs are there, providing you can keep coming up with the songs.
Well, you still have this very strong army of fans, haven't you, that support you?
Yes, they
to be thankful for.
I wonder how much of that is down to the press, really, because of their anti-me sort of writing, really, whether that hardens the fans' cause a little bit. And obviously you're going to lose a lot because of it, but it may harden the resolve of others, because people like to think that they're different, that they're special. People, I do, and fans do. They like to. That's why in England or Britain you get this. Everybody loves the newest thing. As something new comes out, everybody likes it, and then when it becomes really famous, they go on to something else, and that bloke then drops down a little bit. More in this country than any other, and that's the British tendency to want to be into something new, and so or something different, So maybe that maybe in that respect, it may have helped to have hardened up the fans' resolve a little bit. But I'm sure it did enormous damage and still does. Enormous damage.
Seem to be you've got this one-off hit at the moment. There's this collaboration with the fellow from Shack Attack. I mean, that is just a one-off thing, is it?
Yeah, really. That was written. I did that purely because I thought it was going to be an album track, just for the fun of it. And then it came out rather well. Polydor liked it. It went out and it did the business, and that was almost as big a surprise as Offering Electric, really.
So what else have you got planned for this year yourself?
Well, I've got another single coming out recently. I've just done a load of new deals in Europe, which is good because that's picking up again quite well in Europe. So all the Berserker stuff is just coming out over there. So I'm holding back a little bit with my next thing for Britain. I'd like to go quickly to sort of get on the back of this Bill Sharp thing, but I'm going to have to hold back a little bit to try and get a simultaneous release for the rest of Europe to let them catch up. So that's going to be good. I mean, I'm going to be touring Europe, touring Britain, and then I want to start moving back into America again.
Any great change can we expect from you?
Honestly,
off in a different direction?
No, I doubt it, really. Not a great change. I'm either not good enough to be able to change, on the one hand, and on the other hand, I don't really see the point of it. Because every time you change dramatically, you stand a chance of losing everything you've got, the fans that you've got, who obviously like what you've done before, and not getting any new ones because they didn't like what you did before and they're against you anyway. It's like if the Basic Rollers suddenly come out with some amazing song. Probably people still wouldn't like it much because they'd be embarrassed to buy it because it's a Basic Rollers.
Well, do you feel trapped then?
Not trapped as such, not directly, no. But I do feel like I'm going on the motorway and there's barriers either side, and I can sort of swerve around a lot, but I can't ever get out of that road. Not safely. I mean, I could break through the barrier and hopefully I'll land on the other side in one piece, but it would be very dangerous. And at this precise moment in time, I don't see the point. I've got my own label, I've got bands on it who I can experiment through them, because I produce a lot of them, and I could do that. I can work with other people and do off-the-wall things, really. That's if I had the talent to do it anyway, I don't know. As it is, I sort of meander quite nicely. On one album, sort of like turns away from the last one and then sort of turns off somewhere else. But it's never a dramatic change, it's just gentle curves. And I like it that way.
I've said to a lot of other people. Thank you very much. My guest on this week's View from the Top, that was Gary Numan.
Let's call out the dogs. Gary Numan. Gosh, we sound a bit odd in here at the moment, but I'm sure it'll work out in the end. Gary, welcome to Saturday, very live today.
Hello.
Did you hear Round Table last night?
No.
We were reviewing the single, and Gary Davis said something that I thought was interesting, so I put it to you. He said he wished that you varied your sound more, and I wondered whether you probably would argue that you do.
I would argue that, yeah. I said it before, but it's like anything. I'm not a fan of Beethoven. So to me, all Beethoven sounds exactly the same, and I couldn't tell one from the other. Yet to a Beethoven fan, every single movement will sound incredibly different to every other one.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be very interested in something to spot or to hear the differences.
What differences would you divine in the new album? The LP is called The Fury. It comes out in a couple of weeks' time. What differences would you divine in that to what you have done in the past? What have you tried to do differently?
Well, I've used a producer, or producers, for the first time in this one, ever.
Right, because we have a white label, no details at all on it, so
No,
tell me more. I'm learning.
The two men called themselves a Wave Team, who, before this, really operated a computer synthesizer, and that's how I first met them, to do that. I was using Colin Thurston, who's done the old Duran and Human League stuff before, and he had to go and work with Human League. And so the Wave Team just took over. And so that, to me, is you're having somebody... They also played in it as well as producing it, so a completely different style of playing, completely different machines, which they operate to what I've used before, and a different approach to it entirely. So it's very hard to sort of pin down differences when you're so new to it, because I've only just finished it about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is why you've only got a white label of it, and you just got it done. That was yesterday. So it's very, very hard to say. They spent much, much longer on my voice this time, really sort of... making me do it properly. But before, as soon as when I was producing myself, if I sung the notes right, that was the end of it, and I was out and on to the next one. So that was I think that's probably the biggest improvement on it.
Certainly, I think the vocals are very good on it, and it's this very subtle sort of nuances that you're getting into your vocal style now. That it's almost getting to a Middle Eastern style of singing, with the variations of notes and tone and things.
Well, I'm getting older. I think the older you get and the more you sing, the better it must become.
Is it because you're discovering more about yourself and what you can do?
Well, I think any voice improves with age. It tends to mellow. You lose that sort of hard edge to it a little bit. Your range becomes larger, and the way to control the voice, you learn how to do it more. And especially playing live, that normally brings out quite a lot in you. You need to know what you're doing with that.
Using all this computer stuff in the studio, how live were you able to make the approach to recording the LP? Were you trying to get it to capture that live spark, or is it very much a technical exercise?
No, in the studio it's still very, very technical, probably more than ever now. The thing about computers is they say, it must be very, very fast and exciting, but it isn't, because it takes so long to program the things and get them running. It actually makes it probably longer to record an album than it did before. It's... I don't know. I think the end result of computerized synthesizers is the quality of the sounds on them is much better than it was before, more than anything.
But it's not hard to maintain your enthusiasm over a long and complex process, because it must be a bit like making a movie, where you have to stand around for hours just before you have to do your one little bit or something. Do you not find that sort of dulls the excitement of recording?
That does have an effect upon it, and I think it depends on the people you're working with as to how you get around it. Now, the Wave Team are basically they're a lot of fun. They're like really funny people to work with, and so that tend to kept up the spirits. We were waiting for an hour for the thing to program in, because it kept rejecting it.
You get the impression of these computer experts all in white coats, coming in and typing away.
Oh, one of them's in that case.
Is he?
Yeah, he's got a degree in doctorate in cybernetics or something.
That's robots, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Very, very clever man, but got a strange mind to go with it.
We'll be playing another track in a moment, a song called Miracles, but before we hear that, I'd like to talk, because I was reading in one of the sort of press sheets that was handed out, that you've actually been producing other people a bit, some new bands that are signed to your label, or artists. So tell us a bit about them. They have names, it's either Ho Ho Cam and Steve Braun, or Ho Ho Cam and Steve Brown, or tell me about them.
Ho Ho Cam
and
Steve Braun.
Steve Braun.
Ho Ho Cam were the first band that we signed, and they were the reason I started the whole company. in that I wasn't quite sure what to do with my own career, whether to go with a major, because my old deal had finished, or whether to sort of branch out on my own a little bit, which is a bit risky because you lose the financial backing of the major.
Well, you're investing your own capital in the project then, aren't you?
Yeah, there's other problems as well. Their experience in how to get things played on radio and various things, how to get televisions, that sort of thing. You don't have that anymore, so you have to sort of try and get it in. As far as producing the bands is concerned, it was a lot of fun, actually.
The song's called Miracles, and the LP is called The Fury. It's Gary Numan, who was with us on Saturday Live. Talking about you running this record label, do you enjoy the challenge of being a record company boss?
Yeah, it's nice. It's just such a small concern. It sort of don't make it sound like a
Well, you've got
corporation.
hang on, you've got 3 other acts on the label, haven't you, as well as yourself?
5 now.
5?
Just going to get a 6th.
Well, that's getting quite big.
Well, it's a good roster, I suppose, but it's still very, very much a low-key thing. It's still sort of run by me mum, me dad, me a little bit, and Matt is with me today, so mainly actually sort of look after it and keep it going. I did the logos for it and sort of help out with covers and produce bands. I wrote a song for one of the acts on it, produced that.
So you're the artistic side of the exercise.
Yeah, it's much the same as my own career. It's always been that way. My dad sorts the business side of it out and I do the other.
Actually, I noticed this tour that starts in Oxford on the 20th of September, that you're also promoting that yourself.
Yeah.
Is that because, not naming any names, please, but is that because you've discovered in the past that things can sometimes go wrong and you'd rather handle it yourself?
We just found it wasn't that difficult a thing to do, really. So why not? You know?
The promoters will be going mad.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't really say this because my dad's probably been pulling his hair out getting it together. But there's a lot involved in it, I suppose. But there's nothing that with a bit of time and a bit of experience can't be done yourself, really. Still, we'll find out when we get out.
Yes,
everything's missing, no PA.
I'm sure it won't be. Actually, I read that that you're promising the most spectacular light show so far in all the tours that you've been doing. This must be pulling out a few stops in that case.
It's not that much bigger than what I've done before, because they won't fit if they get any bigger. But it's certainly the most interesting one I've ever been able to tour, because I didn't tour the Wembley one, which really was the biggest I probably could ever do, and the best I could ever do. But it's all motorised, it's all computer controlled. The whole lighting rig itself shoots up into the air. There's big towers on it, which then start down and then form part of the roof. That's all computer controlled. The whole band are out of sight to begin with, and they come up on big ramps from behind the back of the stage. And there's a whole... It's full of that. Every song's got something like that going on it. It's been difficult to find places it will go into, and not only that it will fit into, but you can actually... Everything must be hung. It can't be floor supported, or else it tips over.
Oh, dear.
So it all has to be sort of mounted actually up in the roof on big cables. And that's been a problem, finding places that can take the weight and various problems.
And you're playing gigs one day after another too, aren't you, on this tour?
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of running around, eh?
Yeah,
Well-
we got a problem with the Cornwall one. We actually been able to get out of Hammersmith in time and get to it. So we're having to sort of look at that. That may have to come out, unfortunately.
I wonder how long you can make it better than the last time. It's going to be intriguing to see the next tour that happens.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do next.
Perhaps go straight back to nothing, you know.
Go back to clubs,
Acoustic
probably.
set.
Sell some records. And
Actually, your last tour is still around in a way because the Berserker video has done well for itself, hasn't it?
yeah, they just got voted top 20 video, one of the top 20 videos in the world.
And it's being shown at the Venice...
I've forgotten about it.
The Venice Film Festival or
That's
something.
right, yeah.
Do you like the film too yourself? I mean, it must be very difficult for you to look at it objectively, but do you feel it is a successful...
Yeah, no, I keep saying, gosh, I didn't move very well then. Or that light was late. So you look at it in the wrong frame of mind, I think, really. I'm very critical of it, and you're almost trying to learn what you can do better this year than because what you did wrong last year. But that applies to anything, be it a record or an image or anything, really.
Good luck with the new LP and good luck with the tour. I wanted to talk to you a bit about your flying exercises because I gather you've been doing the old air shows this summer.
It is planes, yeah, very much.
Very,
so.
very briefly, what is this plane that you've got? It's a Japanese warplane or something?
It's not really Japanese.
It's
no.
not? Oh.
It looks like a Japanese plane because I've had it done. I faked it with the colours.
Oh.
No, it's a Harvey. It's a World War II aeroplane.
And you go out there doing the sort of stunt flying, do you? Or
Yeah,
showing it off?
I'm very much at the bottom, sort of learning my way up through it. But yeah, I love it. It's great fun.
It's not bad, this isn't, you know. Become Gary Numan, you can do everything you ever wanted to do. It's good. Good luck with the tour and the album, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us today. This track is called This Disease.
Have you got a quick question for me, Ian?
Oh, dear.
Oh, come on, you can think of something.
Quick question.
I'll put the record away while you think of something.
All right, okay then. You've got Gary Numan on later.
Yes. Oh, you're going to ask me a Gary Newman question.
Well,
I'm not going to get it, and then Gary's going to come in here and go, "You rat."
I was going to ask an obscure one, like what's his plane, but I thought better not.
What's his plane?
Go on then. What was his first hit single then?
Well, Our Friends Electric.
That's right. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, yeah. Actually,
Okay.
I like the one just before that. The, what was it called? Down in the Park.
That's right, yeah.
Great
Same
track.
LP.
Great track, that.
It was.
All right, we'll send you the 10 records.
Okay, thanks.
Cheers, Ian.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
They've said an awful lot of things, but the truth of it is, I was involved in... I've only ever been in an aeroplane that's had an accident once. The rest of it was... Some of it was just pure fabrication, some of it was making more than what really happened. Yeah. Like a light didn't come on. Next thing you know, you've crashed, you know. and the one that I did have an accident with was the one that was supposed to land on the motorway, actually landed in a field and ended up in a crunchy line. I wasn't flying that one, I was just in it. So I've never actually flown an airplane that's had an accident. So I don't really know how to answer it. And yet I've got a reputation that's not particularly good, really.
That's right. I'm sure that happens to a lot of people. I know Paul McCartney was saying a few weeks ago that he was in a taxi and there was some smouldering, fuse wire. And by the time he got to the papers, it was in flaming inferno.
Yeah.
Inferno, drags people from blazing cars.
I was in a bomber once. I was in the back of this bomber and we're taxiing out and the tail wheel popped, which is just like getting a flat in your car. You pull over, change it and carry on again. Nothing to it at all. And I think the son had it as a giant bomber, dragged to a standstill seconds before a death takeoff.
I love it.
And I was about 30 feet away from the front. I'm right down the back in a passenger seat, nothing to do with me at all.
Wonderful stuff. Okay, we'll get back to reality and go and look at some planes, shall we?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Good idea. Okay, right, we're over here in the Aerospace Gallery, and I've got the man who knows more about planes than I do, Gary Numan, with me. Gary, we're standing here next to a Spitfire.
Yeah.
Is this... we often see Spitfires at air displays and things. How many Spitfires are there in the country at the moment? Do we know?
There's about... It's hard to say because there's always ones being built and ones being stripped apart. But there's about 11 or 12 at the moment. I think flying in this country, which is probably one of the most common of the World War II airplanes now. A few years ago there was virtually none, maybe 2 or 3.
And loads of enthusiasts around to keep them working. What surprises me, they're obviously used as a fighter plane in World War II.
Yeah.
The cockpit is incredibly small, isn't it?
A lot of British airplanes are built that way. The American ones are quite different. Most of the American airplanes in World War II, you could get up and walk about in them. Even the single-seat fighters, you could really walk about in them. They're much, much roomier. The one I've got is much, much roomier than this. In some sense, it's to do with the engine. We tended to use V12 inline engines, which give you a very narrow front-end profile of them, so that the cockpit tended to be in keeping with that. But the Americans would use round radial engines, which give you a very circular kind of fuselage, and so there's just naturally more room in them.
How do they keep these airworthy? Because, these really are fairly old buses now. Is there one point where they say, this one's had enough, we shouldn't take it up anymore?
Well, a lot of them really are more or less rebuilt. They're certainly better now than they were when they were built. There's much more care going into the riveting, for example, and the skinning of them than there ever was during the war when they was being churned out.
So what else do we have here in the Aerospace Gallery? What's this large one we're standing underneath here?
It's a Shackleton. This is getting out of my area, but this is more into the 50s and the 60s,
right?
Which I know less about. The only thing I really know about this is that a lot of the people that flew these, most of the people that flew these, are now getting mid-range deafness to do with it. There's a certain frequency comes off the... You see, it's got 2 propellers for each engine. There's a certain frequency came off that, and it's directly in line with the cockpit. And people will go deaf after a while because it's incredibly loud at a certain range. And so all the pilots and the navigators are going deaf.
Gosh, now you must have been in several sort of museums or places like this. This one really has got a pretty wide range throughout the ages, isn't it?
Very, yes. Yeah, it really has. Some of this older stuff over here, the biplanes and wooden fabric kind of stuff. My brother's more into that. He's got an old biplane.
What's your favourite plane? If you had a choice and someone said, Gary, we're going to give you a World War II plane, which one would you choose?
Yeah, Corsair.
Yeah. Why? What's special about it?
It's just incredibly hairy. It's 2,500 horsepower, about 400 mile an hour Stratton level. It's one of the ultimate piston fighters. Very, very exciting to fly.
Okay, we'll back with more in a moment. Right now, here's Tubeway Army, Our Friends Electric. is electric. Programme coming live from the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, across the road in the Aerospace Gallery. Gary Numan with me to advise me on these planes. We're here by a Yokosuka Oko Cherry Blossom Model 2 Japanese Navy single-seat suicide attack aircraft. It's the only one that doesn't have a stop button on it, because he used to play. This one, obviously, Gary, was unsuccessful because it's still in one piece.
Yeah, these are the suicide airplanes. I don't know, I'm reading this little board here.
But you, when you do air shows, apparently you take the part of a Japanese, do you?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to be a suicide aeroplane, though. The way these are, the kamikazes. That's what they call me, but I'm not. Well, I play the part of a Zero fighter, and I have to attack some aeroplanes, and eventually I'll get my comeuppance and get shot down.
I mean, how safe are the air shows? I mean, we saw the unfortunate incident a couple of weeks ago, but obviously, I mean, safety is adhered to an awful lot. I mean, very, very stringently. But I mean, some people have been sort of saying, oh, maybe we should stop them. What do you think?
Well, I heard some things recently that were saying air show pilots are all reckless and so on, and it just isn't so. The first code of conduct that's been drawn up to try to regulate who flies in these air shows, to make sure they're good enough, was done by the pilots themselves. It's called the Historic Aircraft Association, which I'm a member of. And now the CAA are now adopting almost their guidelines and doing exactly the same thing. So the pilots themselves began to sort it out long before the authorities got involved. And I think that says a lot for the pilots, personally. They obviously have got a high degree of self-preservation about them. Nobody wants to go out and get killed. And the main thing that's drummed into all of us, every time we have an air show, 30, 40, 50 times a year, is that you don't fly at the crowd, and you don't do this, and you don't do that, you don't come below these heights, and it is very, very safe, as far as I'm concerned. But if you've got a jet doing several hundred miles an hour coming straight at the crowd, and it hits something else, then that is going to happen. If it can happen, then it will. And the only team that I know of in this country that is allowed to fly at the crowd and do a crossing manoeuvre is the Red Arrows.
Does this still give you a great thrill? I mean, you've flown a lot now. Do you still get that sensation when you climb into the cockpit?
It depends on what kind of flying you do. Over the last 3 or 4 years, I've got into air display flying, which is low-level aerobatics, close formation, that kind of thing. And that's a different league altogether. And that is, if it isn't exciting, you shouldn't be doing it, because it's a little bit more dangerous than regular A to B. And you have to get yourself ready for it. But it's incredibly exciting.
And you need nerves of steel as well.
Well, for some of it, maybe.
And finally over here is the helicopter department of the Aerospace Gallery. This one here with the sort of the twin blades. Now, I often see one of these going over. Now, these look quite fearsome when they're in the sky, more so than normal helicopters. These are the Westlands.
Well, this is an old one, the Belvedere. The ones that are around now, most of them are Chinooks, which actually I think it's a Sikorsky design initially. I've flown a Chinook simulator up in Aberdeen somewhere. That was great fun.
Are they more dangerous than planes to fly?
Well, there's more moving parts, so there's more things to fail. And the insurance, I know, because I did a helicopter license about 7 years ago, and the insurance premium was a lot higher. I think that indicates something, but they're safe.
Okay, now I know you're doing a display tomorrow somewhere, aren't you?
At Cranfield, yes, near Bedford.
What are you flying there?
I'll have my aeroplane that's in Japanese colours there.
Okay. And what about touring? Are you doing anything this year, or are you just flying?
We've got another one. Starts a 3-week tour at the end of September. I'm not sure the exact date it starts. The 24th or 25th, I think. An album and single to go with that.
And you've been locked in the studio recently, have you?
Yeah, for about the last 3 months. It's really hard trying to get the air shows and the studio to work hand in hand, you know.
Are you working with the same team, with the Nicholsons, or...?
No, that's all finished now. I'm with a company called IRS. That's Miles Copeland's company.
Right.
And I'm back off on my own again. And also with Bill Sharp. There's a Sharp Newman album due. January, I think.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. Gary, thanks for coming along. Thanks for taking me around the planes.
Thank you.
Without you, I wouldn't have been able to do this bit, I'm sure, because I know nothing about them at all.
11:45 and on your knees and pray to the God of the day who happens to be the one and only. Would you welcome, please? I die, you die. Gary Numan. Morning, Gary.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, well, it's nice to have you on. A number of people have written in, as they often do when it comes to your good self. And they say, Gary Numan, listen, God of the day, get him on. Says he almost slipping into a Brian Clough impression and trying not to. Anyway, you've got a new record out, Gary. Where have you been, for heaven's sake?
I've been working quite hard in the studio for quite a while. I did a couple of tours last year just to keep my head above water, but apart from that, it's been mainly studio stuff.
Keeping your head above water, financially speaking, or artistically speaking?
Artistically speaking.
Right.
Although they are quite closely connected at times.
That's right, yeah, one leads to the other. So
So the new album?
Well, the new album is probably going to be called Scar, but I've yet to finally decide it, and that'll be ready September, October time for a tour at the same period. But in the meantime, I've been doing this Refugee single as a project with some friends, really.
Now, are these friends Dada Dang? Is that how you say it?
Dada Dang is part of it. It's actually the people that wrote it. The man called Hugh Nicholson who wrote it. And I was invited to sing the song during the last tour that I did last year. And I worked with them before many years ago on a thing called Radio Heart, which was really good fun. So I was quite keen to get involved, really, although it's obviously separate to my own thing. It was a nice little thing to be doing in the summer, as I was going to be quiet otherwise, to be honest.
That was March '87, of course, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. I remember it well. Now, I was just, with apologies to Hugh, though, for this, I was just looking at are these the words to the song on the CD cover? What is that? An intergalactic close meeting? Rolls of drums and movement games? Something weirdly fascinating for eye and ear? They are Dada Dang. Was this Hugh's corner or what?
Nothing to do with this song.
Well, what is that? What's that all about?
No, that must be to do. We have these a percussion group from Italy on it, which are called Dada Dang, who are quite phenomenal players. But to look at them, it's really bizarre. It's like something out of it's like a white version of Darth Vader, and they all stand in a procession, and they do this very strange and unusual form of marching. They stroll. They kind of roll from side to side as walk. It's very intimidating to see it. And he wears this uniform that glows. Even at night, it picks up any kind of light that's around and it glows. And it's a fantastic thing to see. There's really nothing like it. And hopefully we can get some TV for this, but we're going to get them over onto the television, because it really is brilliant. There's nothing here like it at all. But I think it must be talking about them.
Are you still flying, Gary, at all?
Yeah, the airshow season's just about to kick off. Got my first big display at North World on Saturday.
How will we know it's you?
Well, normally my aeroplane is white with red dots on the side, but I'm using somebody else's this year. It's got a red front and back, and it looks very old.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll look out for it. And God of the Day's Gary Numan, and his questions are coming next. And now we're back splendidly with Gary Numan, God of the Day. Here we go, Gary, with your questions. And who would you like on your cloud with you, apart from Dada Dang?
I'd have my girlfriend Gemma and my family. They're all my best friends.
All of them?
Yes.
They're all up there?
Yes.
Okay.
That's okay then.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, you can do what you want as your God for a day. And anyone to make a saint, Gary?
I would make Ayrton Senna a saint for people in a hurry, to be honest. I was a great fan of Ayrton Senna's, and I think it's tragic.
Have you been a motor racing fan forever, and does that actually go with the flying fixation that you've got?
I think it's closely connected with powerful machinery and speed and so on. Yeah, I think there's good connection. I've been a motor racing fan for a long time. I actually do karting, which is one of the lower ends of it, but I enjoy it very much. Yeah.
Anyone you'd like to send a thunderbolt on, Mr. Gary Numan, sir?
I like this. I wouldn't want to name names. Anyone that drives with their red fog lights on when it's not foggy, I find that incredibly irritating, especially when it's raining.
They tend to be Ford Capri drivers, I think. I always find they're the most irritating.
I can't believe it. I hate people when they do that.
And a miracle you'd like to perform, Gary?
Seriously, I was definitely trying to find a cure for cancer. It's in my family, and it's very frightening, and it's awful.
All right, Gary, nice to talk to you. Wish you all the best for this Like a Refugee song.
Thank you.
And say hi to Dada Dang.
I will.
When you see him. And God of the Day today has been His Reverentness, Gary Numan. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
It hurts and I'm lonely, and I should never betray. And I miss you tonight, so it's time to leave. You see, this means everything. To ask, but our friends electric one day might run down. Oh, now I'm not too long. gone.